afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be the one person speaking in English today. My Spanish is not quite where it needs to be. But thank you for including me in this very interesting and important discussion, especially by including me, you include the Caribbean and people from the territories. So my brief presentation will be slightly different than those that have preceded mine. But I see the purpose of Save Democracy as so critical to the well-being of our hemisphere and its people. This discussion has been extremely informative for me and has demonstrated how important what happens in any one of our countries in the region impacts us all. One of the reasons that I'm glad to be here is that when one speaks or writes about the region, it's usually termed Latin America and the Caribbean, but the Caribbean never seems to get the required attention. I'm not sure that I can do it justice, really, because I'm more focused on things of the territory. But I will begin by saying that the nations that exist in the Caribbean are some of the strongest and most stable democracies, of course, with the exception of Haiti. And unless the rest of the Caribbean and the UN take action to stabilize Haiti and end the anarchy of gang rule there, we risk the destabilization of the Caribbean countries and territories. I remember when the vice president was Biden, insisting that the territories in the region, which are the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, be a part of his task force on Latin America and the Caribbean, and he did. But as Haiti was deteriorating, all the attention was being drawn to Venezuela during the Chavez presidency. And both are now countries where people are still suffering and desperately trying to get into the US by any means possible. In my experience in Haiti, I've been there several times. I observed the elections. The people really, at the outset, embraced what they thought was the coming of democracy, but right now they've given up hope. So saving democracy in the region is critical if we are ever going to be able to save the people in Venezuela, in Haiti, and the countries where people are being denied their human and civil rights. But as an example of how weakening democracy in just one country has ripple effects, I also have to say that what happened in Venezuela as democracy began to fade also directly affected us in the Little Virgin Islands with the closure of our oil refinery, which caused us to lose many Virgin Islanders who lost their jobs and had to move away. But it also affected our entire economy for many years after. And I'm sure the rest of the Caribbean was affected as well because of their dependence on Venezuelan oil. So as a Caribbean American, I have to be concerned about threats to democracy anywhere in the region. But as a person living in the US, in a US territory, where our citizenship is not guaranteed, it is the threats to democracy in our country, the United States of America, that gives me, and I'm sure all of us, grave concern. And what happens going forward will be decided at the next election, but also by any decisions from our Supreme Court that may come in the interim. But that does not mean that we don't have to be vigilant and continue to be strong advocates, always making sure that the truth is told every single day. And listening to the recent town hall that was mentioned by Senator Allen, seeing what has happened to silence elected officials in Tennessee, and I think it was Montana, looking at what's being done in Florida that seems to be catching on elsewhere, the pending legislation in Texas, the utterings of lies by current members of Congress, and the support for loaded guns everywhere in the public, and all of the other things that Senator Allen and Congresswoman Debbie talked about actually keeps me awake at night. Any weakening of our democracy will not only have hemispheric impact, but it will have global impact. We've already seen how what has happened in the past Trump administration has seemed to catch on, or at least be encouraged elsewhere, including in our hemisphere. The common denominator where these issues exist, whether here or in Mexico and Nicaragua and other countries, is always the pursuit of power by any means possible and the misinformation and ignoring the needs of the people in that process. As a territory, though, we're watching Puerto Rico's coming plebiscite and what takes place in Congress after, depending on the outcome. The outcome, I think, is likely to be statehood. But I remember the conversations around the plebiscite in my early years in Congress. There was no way the House was going to vote in support of the decision of the Puerto Rican people, although they claimed it was only over English as the official language. And I also remember the debasing and ugly comments when each Congress convened, with us starting to argue for rights to vote in committee of the whole, which we only got under Democratic Congresses. Guam is currently working towards a vote on status, and discussions of status are increasing here in the Virgin Islands as well. With the rise, or really the uncovering of the extent of white supremacy and the ultra-right in our country and its influence on our politics, if it was successful in weakening our democracy, that would not bode well for places like ours that are made up largely of people of color. We're not even considered natural-born citizens. So unless democracy is not only preserved, but strengthened, our future is under threat. So I want to just take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this organization of Save Democracy. And as was said just before me, we have a lot of work to do, but I look forward to doing that work with you, especially as we see that it affects all of us, no matter where we live in the hemisphere. I shudder to think what can happen if the rest of the hemisphere, if the lies, the authoritarian principles, and the far-right actions prevail, and democracy is not saved here in the United States. So that's where I'm going to focus my efforts, but I look forward to joining everyone, as was suggested that all of us need to come together and fight to keep democracy strong in our hemisphere. Thank you for, again, including me. What I've heard a lot is that the people are not educated as to the purpose of democracy and what democracy can mean in their daily lives. I ran into that with trying to pass a constitution. If you can't translate it into table and kitchen issues, it doesn't resonate. And our young people are not being taught as well in our school system on civics and government and things like that. So they don't even understand. And now they're being told that they can't learn the history that has gotten us to the problems that we're facing now. So I think a process of educating, it has to come from the grassroots. We're leaving them behind, we're not educating them. And if they don't understand the importance of voting and democracy, it's going to be very difficult. They will always be misled by the misinformation that's being spread. So an organization like this, perhaps, can start something like that if it's not already happening. But we have to make sure that the grassroots of all of our countries, including the United States, understand the importance of democracy. Someone made a comment in one of the in the chat that so many people are voting for Trump because they believe the lies. So education is really, I think, a key component that has to happen among the broader population for any change to happen. That's my comment.